smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson.
Insert Democrat socialist here.
Runs the Democratic House floor for 30 plus years running. He's promising this and he's stealing that. Where can you get that kind of money? He's using your house like his own piggy bank. You ought to know by now. You can pay off your house here in Illinois, but you can never keep up with the taxes. Oh, how it's always been the plan to have a taxpayer pay, no doubt. Not a matter of if anymore, but when you're moving out.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. That theme music means it's time for our weekly confab with Ted Dabrowski, president of Wirepoints.org. All things Illinois policy related. Hey, Ted, I know some people weren't moving out, at least not yet. All those AFSCME members that just inked, well, it was inked on their behalf, that new 4-year deal, nice raises, modest health care premiums, taxpayers on the hook for another $630 million, which is, of course, a deal at twice the price for the kind of service we get from state and county employees and so forth.
No one could get that kind of raise. 19.2% raise.
Oh, well, you got to deal.
They won the lotto, Dan.
No, you got to deal with inflation. They do
right.
very difficult jobs and so on and so forth. There's no reason why they shouldn't continue to make 20 to 25% more than their private sector counterparts who are similarly situated in terms of job responsibilities, right, Ted?
Well, yeah, I mean, and there's a lot wrong with that. It's not really 19%, right? So it's 19% over 4 years, but it's much more than that because those are just the stated numbers for moving from 1 year to the next. But people move up a step. Sometimes they move over what are called lanes.
Years of service.
There's a whole bunch of years of service. There's they have these massive pay grade upgrades. So they're moving a whole bunch of people from one grade to the next. They said thousands. We don't know the details, but they said thousands of people are jumping pay grades. And so the true number, we don't know what it is. But what I can tell you this, and here's why I think, and this is the whole part of the corrupt failure of Illinois, is that this class of workers, and I'm going to call them the government class, the ones that work for government, they get guaranteed contracts, right? This contract's a 4-year contract. In there are guaranteed raises. Merits doesn't matter. How hard you work doesn't matter. These are guaranteed raises. These same people have these guaranteed benefits within those contracts. Then you got the guaranteed pensions. You got this free AFSCME workers get free retiree health care after 20 years of work. So they can retire in their 50s, have full medical coverage until Medicare kicks in at 65. That's worth a ton of money. Nobody gets that in the private sector. So when you add all this stuff up, it's why Illinois is headed where it's going because not only does it happen for AFSCME, it happens for all the teachers, it happens for the all the workers. And so it's
well, I mean, if legislators get a 17% raise, which they voted themselves this past session, then why not bring up the state and local workers too?
Yeah, and it goes to your comment you made earlier that everybody needs to be in, and that's how you do this in Illinois. Everybody needs to be participating in something, so that you always have this incentive to vote with the system as opposed to against it. And you look at Pritzker and these contracts. It's the same for the police and fire and teachers and everybody. Everybody has a hand in the jar, and nobody wants to pull it out.
Yeah, but I mean, firefighters and police officers, the FOP, they want the same sweet maternity leave deal that the CTU just got, 12 weeks for the mom and then for the dad.
Yeah, paid leave, paid. I mean, that's phenomenal.
It's a quarter of the season. I mean, the school year, when you think about how many days they're in school.
Yeah, and then if you think about it, they're also not in school for 3 months during the summer. So it's all part of the phenomenal packages that have left Illinois where it is financially.
Well, I mean, thinking about this too, just holistically. So you got a handful of Democrats who, and this was the case about a decade ago too. I remember, what did I call them? Chicago 7 or something. You got a handful of Democrats, constitutional officers, legislative leaders. They run everything. Mayor. Handful of Democrats that live within a few square miles of one another and control about, I don't know, about 100 billion, $110 billion worth of government and about 125,000 jobs. And it turns out that you control those kind of resources, then you control the state of 13 million people, and there's nothing anybody can do about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's pretty much how it is when you think about it. And I often argue this. You've got, it's amazing. You've got between workers and retirees, you've got 1.1 million actives and retirees from government across all the different governments. So when you think about the voting age, right, it's going to be a big proportion of it. Then you got husband and wives or close relatives, and you get this critical mass that will once they get the bullet points of how to support whether it's a progressive tax or whether it's a workers' rights amendment. You've got a critical mass of vocal supporters of policy and, of course, automatic voters. And that's where we've gotten to the point where you also look at how Pritzker hands out grants to all these different groups. Again, you got to buy everybody. They have skin in the game to keep the game going, and that's how it works.
BLM Brandon Johnson had an op-ed in the NPR Times. Speaking of state-run things like state-run media here. Hey, parents and students, make your voices heard this year at CPS. Yeah. What should they say? Give me back my scholarship so I don't have to send my kid to CPS?
Yeah. There's if you look at this transition team, they had a whole bunch of stuff. It's a long thing of all the goodies they want. And one of the big things in there was, of course, the education demands. And fascinating, of course, and not surprising, is that there was not a single thing about better outcomes. Not at all. I didn't see the word mentioned about outcomes. But what they did have is, hey, we want to get these kids engaged, get them engaged in the schools, and pay them for being vocal about what they want. And so it kind of goes back to this whole thing of Brandon Johnson again wanting to use government to hire more people, hire more kids, get the kids' voices. It's all the kids aren't motivated to ask for, we want better outcomes. They're motivated to ask for more stuff, and that's what you see in a lot of these transition reports and things like that. It's just give us more stuff.
Yeah, well, it seems Chicago's still falling apart at the seams. There was 40 teens charged after that smash and grab at the 7-Eleven on Roosevelt. We had 2 teen girls shot last night, one fatally. So don't you think a way to defund the police is to not hire police officers? Is that maybe a strategy that's working for Mayor Johnson's camp? Because there's no plan in place to hire more police officers or even move detectives or police officers into the detective division.
Kids are going to make silly decisions or being silly kids. Silly.
I still say this has nothing to do with the number of policemen. It's all about whether policemen are allowed to police, and whether their backs are covered. And you could add 1,000 more police right now, and it doesn't matter. As long as these kids are allowed to do this, and we're not allowed to demonize the kids or call them out for it. Then you could add all the police you want. It's the same thing as adding more teachers to CPS, right? It's worthless as long as the system's not working. So, the real root of the problem is again and I was just looking at some of the charges of these kids. One of the kids who got arrested the other night with that 7-Eleven uprising, let's call it, again, was out on ankle bracelet. They're just revolving doors. But so here you got a 17-year-old boy. So this is fascinating for all these kids, right? These kids are taking over. Maybe there's some good news in what happened the other night because they finally arrested a lot of kids. That's the first time we've seen that in a while in terms of mass.
But Ted, they only did because. Yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting, but the only reason why they arrested them is they told them, you're violating curfew, leave. And Fred Waller said yesterday, he said, well, normally when we tell them it's a curfew violation and we're going to arrest you, they leave. But this time they stayed and they continued fighting. And there's a 12-year-old there and an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old there.
We'll leave when we're done fighting. What's wrong with that?
I mean, literally, the cops are standing there. If you see the video, it's fascinating that they're just, throwing punches right in front of a cop, and then a cop's trying to arrest him. Is just chaos.
Yeah, 17-year-old boy charged with the unlawful use of a machine gun. A 15-year-old with a felony unlawful use of a weapon. A 16-year-old girl charged with unlawful use of a weapon. I mean, it's gone down to where you've got kids, young kids carrying arms, and they don't care. It's and they'll stick around even if the police is around. So at least the good news is they acted. But is this just a one-off, or is there going to be a more serious attempt at doing something about it?
Well, we got some other good news with migrants being transported up from Texas to Chicago, for example, backfilling some of those open slots in CPS. How are the migrant kids doing?
I love it. They had this huge announcement a couple of weeks ago. Hey, we're gonna open up this enrollment center to help the migrants come in, and so that they have better education results. And I don't know why they don't check what they're doing, but the school that they chose to do the welcoming, the enrollment process is called Robert Clemente Community Academy High School. And in that high school, just 5 of every 100 kids can read at grade level. 5 of every 100 can read at grade level. That means 95 can't. And then if you dig further into the detail, of those 95 kids who can't read at grade level, 70 of them are at the worst possible score. They're so far away from proficiency that this school is an absolute failure. And this is where Brandon Johnson is welcoming the migrant families. And I think it'd be
keep the bar low for them to clear.
Well, Dan, here's the easy argument. I mean, it's easy to say, don't even go to that school. Don't even go to those schools. You're better off not going to those CPS schools.
Well, now they have 1,400 new kids, so that's going to fill a lot of vacancies that they've had.
Oh, yeah.
They love this. Are you kidding me?
Well, they can mill about in the hallways just like the indigenous kids that go to Clemente, right? I mean, what's the difference? They certainly have the room at most of these high schools. So. Well,
yeah, they do, and I think Amy's right. They want these kids because we've seen a dramatic drop in enrollment over the last 20 years. 125,000 fewer kids at CPS, and so this is like sometimes a celebrating that finally CPS is growing again. But look at how you have to grow. You have to basically have Abbott send busloads of kids to Chicago for the school to actually grow.
Well, but that's your average daily attendance goes up. You get more money from the state. It's all good.
It's a win-win.
This CPS isn't in the business of educating kids. I mean, so why? I don't even know why we measure it anymore. Really, it's obvious, right? They're not in the business of educating children. They haven't been for a long time. So just recognize that and just treat it as a jobs program for the adults, and that's what it is.
Yeah. In a daycare center for the kids.
Yeah,
and that's
right.
Brandon Johnson's agreeing with you. He said that this testing is racist. We should stop it.
Exactly.
And I think don't be surprised. I always worry that the more that we talk about how bad these results are, I worry that they're going to yank that data from the system so that we can't monitor it anymore. And that would be one good way to solve it. Say these tests are racist, remove the scores, and now that we're all in the dark about what's really going on.
Ted Dabrowski, President of Wirepoints, wirepoints.org, all things Illinois policy related. Thanks, Ted.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
A show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
A storm is on the horizon, and you need to keep the lights on no matter what. Your business relies on the power being on 24/7. It's the lifeblood of your data and computer systems. Weather-related outages from the power company are not acceptable. Your need for a source of power that's reliable 24/7, along with round-the-clock service that can dispatch technicians to your site immediately, is mission critical. Your business needs